Thank you very much. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us for this presentation. I'm very excited to talk to you about ways that we can encourage young people to seek help. So yeah, let's jump right into it. The session for today, we are going to first define what we mean by young person. We're going to have some time to introduce ourselves a little bit and have a brief reflection. We are also going to talk a little bit about early education and prevention. That is definitely something that I'm very passionate about, health education and behavior. And so we're going to talk about ways we can encourage young people as early as possible. Then we'll jump into starting the conversation and talking to young people, phrases, words we can say, things we should avoid saying. We'll have some video clips to help illustrate this. We'll also define what help means. We're encouraging young people to seek help, so we're going to define what that means. And then at the end, we'll talk about modeling self-care in ourselves for young people. So hopefully by the end of today, you are able to differentiate between natural youth behaviors and potential signs or symptoms of a mental health challenge, learn skills to have dialogue with young people and have concrete things you can say, and then identify and list some age-appropriate resources that we can use if needed. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do is define what we mean by young adult or young person. So there's a few different terms or phrases that we can use, different stages throughout adolescence. So typically when someone says adolescence, they're talking about between 12 to 18. We might say things like transitioning adult or young adult as 18 to 22. Same thing for 18 to 26. Maybe emerging adult. Those are maybe some phrases you might hear. So for the purposes of this presentation, we are going to try to think about that entire window. So from 12 to 26, maybe even give or take a year. So that's what we're going to be thinking about as we define who we are encouraging to seek help. Okay, so why should we focus on young people? If you are attending this presentation, you probably have some reasons why. You already know why. That's why you're engaged in this. But some other reasons maybe to bring this up, the importance of early intervention, which we will definitely talk about. We know that unfortunately 3 out of 4 people who are adults with mental health challenges were showing signs when they were young, but before 24. So these are not things that just automatically happen when you're an adult. These are things that a lot of young people are bringing with them into adulthood. So we want to, again, address this as early as possible to prevent someone from living with mental health challenges for longer than needed. We also know that suicide, unfortunately, is a leading cause of death for adolescents 15 to 19. And this information is coming directly from SAMHSA. We know that suicide is a leading cause, and therefore it's really important to have language we can use with young people to prevent that from happening. So what I'm telling you today can be used very helpful for early intervention, but it's also things that we can use if a young person is in a crisis or is thinking about suicide, or if you have reason to believe that they might be suicidal. So you can use this at any point in there, but again, the earlier we can catch this, the better. Okay, so I want us to kind of get into the right mindset as we continue forward today. So the first thing I want to do, I see a lot of people have already done this, which is great. Thank you for that. If you would like to, you don't have to, please share the city where you live or work and what your role is. So if you're a parent or a behavioral health care worker, maybe law enforcement, maybe you're all of those things. It's like I said, if you haven't shared already in the chat, go ahead and do that. And I'm going to take a minute to just kind of look through there and see kind of where you guys are from and where you're working. For this next part, again, this is optional and you don't have to put it in the chat box. You can if you want to, but you definitely do not need to. This is going to be more of a private reflection. I want you to just kind of think back to when you were maybe in this earlier age group, like 12 to 16 to 18 or so, basically middle or high school. Just kind of think back, if you want to, think back to what that was like, and maybe what life was like, and what things felt like. Maybe some of the ways that it was similar or different to your current life. Maybe the location was a lot different. Think about the kind of things that shaped your decision making. Maybe the kind of role models that you had or wish that you had. Maybe the kind of things that were in style. What kind of hairstyle did you have? Just thinking back to what that was like when you were in middle or high school. What some of your hobbies were, ways that you coped with stress, ways that you got health information, sources of information. Okay, awesome. I'm seeing a really nice mix of really positive things and then also a mix of some of the struggles that come alongside being a young person. Awesome. And I like to try to think about this and kind of put ourselves back in this place whenever we talk about young people. For one, just to kind of, it's fun and it gets us in the mindset of maybe a young person, kind of remembering what that was like. When we try to be empathetic, we want to put ourselves in other people's shoes. And sometimes we can try our best to do that, but we don't always know what that experience was like. Right? But at this point, I'm assuming you are probably an adult, like you have been a young person at some point in your life. Every single person that is participating today has been a young person. You might still be maybe a young adult in that little age window that we're looking at, but for the most part, we are past that stage, right? So we can kind of remember back to what that was like. And even though it would be a lot different based on social media or not having social media, and obviously other changes in the world since then. But I think it's fun to try to kind of think back to that and remember that young people are their own little subculture and it is going to be different. Being a young person right now, today, is different than what it was like when we were young people or young adults. Again, let's think back to like high school. I'm assuming everyone is not in high school at this point. So it's just kind of fun to think back to that and remember what that was like and who was influencing us. What are some of the things that would have encouraged me to get help or you to get help maybe when you were in high school, if you were struggling and if you didn't seek help. So I think it's fun to think back to that. And it's important to remember that being a young person is different than being, an adult. Right now, the way that I think logically throughout my day maybe was not the same as when I was in high school and didn't have that insight. Um, okay, thank you guys for participating. It was really fun to read in the chat what you guys were writing down. Um, we're gonna keep going here. Like I said, I am very passionate about health education and prevention. That is the field that I work in currently. I have no intention to change anytime soon. I love being able to talk about early education, early prevention, and the focus of this course is not to talk in depth about each of these. I just want to bring them up in case there are some that you are not familiar with, or if you are a parent, or again, working really closely with young people. These are some things that would be really beneficial to know when we were young. In working in this field, I've talked to a lot of adults who say, I wish I would have known this when I was young. So I've kind of compiled a list of things that people have told me I wish someone would have taught me when I was younger, in hopes that we really can teach this to young people, whether that's being as their parent or in the schools, or if you're a behavioral healthcare worker. These are things that we want to encourage young people to know more about. So one of the first ones is this idea of regulating the nervous system, being able to self-regulate. This is something that a lot of people are not taught in a formal way of any kind. I was recently teaching a class of adults, and I asked them, how many of you have ever been taught about the nervous system and how to regulate it? And only like one or two people raised their hand. And it was from it was from like therapy. It wasn't from just a school system, or it wasn't like a preventative thing. It was something that they learned after having signs and symptoms. So this is something that's really important to teach to young people, how to regulate the nervous system and what that means. And basically the short version of that is just being able to move yourself, like by yourself, from fight or flight stress response into a calm response and having the control to kind of do that yourself. So we expect young people to just kind of grow up and know how to do this, but we don't teach them, and we don't talk about this. And this is not something that you just wake up one day and know how to do. Um, so I know in the wheel there's some words that are like really tiny, so I wrote them to the side here. It's emotional control, things like aggression, violence, defiance, mental health, physical wellness, academic performance, positive social interaction, responsibility, discipline, athletic performance. These are all connected. These are all a very holistic approach to a young person. And by teaching self-regulation earlier in life, we can teach, this is something we have to practice and work on. So we can do this throughout our adulthood instead of just learning it as an adult. So some ways to do that are essentially coping strategies that are positive and healthy. First, practice identifying the emotions. Like when you're in the stress response, learning how to identify that in the first place, and then engaging in some sort of strategy to move into the calm response. So this can be breathing techniques, physical movement, meditation, going outside, having some technology-free breaks, blocks of time that is not involving the screen or TV or social media. Lots of physical things like nutrition and sleep, hobbies, anything really that that young person enjoys doing. Those are all examples of coping strategies that can help. And again, we're not going to spend too much time like discussing each one of these, but just know that it's really important to proactively teach this to young people instead of just assuming that they're going to pick this up on their own. So yeah, essentially coping skills. There's a couple other ones on this in this picture that young people might, really enjoy, like listening to music, journaling, drawing, or engaging in any sort of artistic expression. Drinking water, physical health skills are definitely included in this. Positive self-reflection. This is something that is really important to talk about because young people, or really all people, they do self-reflect, but we want to try to teach them to do this in a positive way instead of staying up all night thinking about, replaying the day and remembering every single thing that they did wrong or that they're embarrassed about, or have, high anxiety about this. Young people are reflecting on stuff like that. So we want to teach them how to identify common themes or to learn to look at patterns and to be able to learn something from self-reflection. Again, this was a really pungent example. Someone that was like 20, 21, we were just talking about this. And she said, I wish someone would have taught me how to positively self-reflect when I was young. We were talking about, being mindful. And she said, no one ever taught me how to do that or how to even get started on that. So there's a lot of journal like templates or formatting for that, or just, free form journaling can be really helpful too. Through doing things like that, we can start to identify our own patterns and really learn from our mistakes instead of just continuing to make them. Healthy relationships and boundaries with all people, but especially significant others. This is crucial in young adults who are just now forming their first significant other relationships, or again, relationships with with family members, learning boundaries in a positive way, in a respectful way. This is really, really important, and this is something that a lot of young people are not taught unless there's already some sort of issue, or already some sort of, evidence of intimate partner violence or something like that. So it's really important for them to have this kind of foundation before they start dating and before they get into relationships that are difficult to get out of. So providing practical information, like letting them know what boundaries look like and how to set them, especially when it comes to like physical, sex and intimacy, things like that. It's really important for them to have examples of boundaries and know how to use them and practice using them as early as possible. Learning how to identify red flags in unhealthy relationships, again, like early before it becomes an unbreakable cycle. There's a hotline down here, 1-800-RESPECT, that can be used if there's, again, some sort of like concern, but we want to try to teach this before there's evidence of harm. The statistics for, intimate partner violence are really alarming. I didn't put any specific ones in here, but this is definitely a topic that young people, boys and girls, all young people need to learn this. So again, definitely a really important one. I did put more articles and links in the reference slides later, some really good links that I found, just simple ways to practically talk to young people about how to establish this. Okay, then also we have social media. Again, we cannot talk about young people without talking about social media in today's world. So again, the key here is education. That's going to be my answer to almost everything, starting with education. We can teach young people about social media, teaching them social media safety, stranger danger type of safety, verifying accounts, not posting all the things that are sometimes being posted, teaching young people about self-esteem and the difference between internal and external validation, giving them activities and connecting with them to help them build self-esteem so that they are not looking for that external validation at the same level. There's a lot of debate on social media being helpful or unhelpful, but again, the key kind of underlying theme here is that we are teaching our young people about social media, giving them all the information so they can make informed decisions when they are posting or engaging with social media. So I want to talk about early intervention. And I think the easiest way to break that up is to kind of look at it as recognizing and also responding. It's not enough to just recognize. We have to respond. We have to approach this young person or approach someone else that is maybe in charge of or responsible for or in relation to this person. So we're going to talk about how to do that, how to recognize, and then how to respond. So the first thing is to notice. Is this typical natural behavior for a young person? Is this expected? Or is this a warning sign? I think that's a really important thing to kind of start with so we know what we're looking for. So as a young person is getting older, it is natural to want to replace family time with friend time or to start to want to spend more time with friends. If the young person does not want to spend time with anyone, friends, family, across the board, they're not wanting to, that could potentially be problematic. And when I say potentially problematic, that's really just meaning we are recognizing and we're going to start to respond. It's something that is worth mentioning or bringing up. It's normal to replace your favorite activity for something new, to kind of grow out of your hobbies or whatever it is you're interested in and to try new things. That's normal. But if they are not replacing these interests with anything at all, and they are just not engaging in any sort of hobbies or any sort of pleasurable activities, that could be potentially problematic. It is natural to get upset when things don't go as expected. Again, sometimes we just think that as someone gets older, they're just going to automatically manage these emotions, but that's not necessarily the case. And young people still have really big feelings, especially as they are starting to get older. These big feelings are about big topics, like their self-identity and their place in the world and really understanding how the world around them works. So it is normal for them to have, a lot of emotions, to have big feelings. But if they are consistently throwing intense temper tantrums and not able to control or regulate in any capacity, or deliberately breaking rules or hurting anyone, that is going to be potentially problematic. Again, expressing anger, big feelings, that is normal for them to have big feelings. We need to teach them ways to express that are healthy, because those feelings are happening. We don't want to just like not talk about them. So if they're harming themselves or anyone else, though, that is definitely going to be problematic and something that we want to talk about. Changes in their physical appearance are normal, especially as they are starting to grow up. That we see physical development changing, but also maybe the way that they wear their hair or the clothes that they wear or the makeup or nail polish or whatever they're experimenting with. Those changes are normal. But if there's evidence of bruises or cuts, again, any sort of evidence that they're harming themselves or doing anything that is, physically dangerous, that can definitely be problematic. So these are just some examples of things we want to look for instead of, far too commonly people say, oh, they're just a teenager, like that's just normal. But a lot of this does not have to be normal. They don't have to live with these signs and symptoms. So there's other signs and symptoms we can look for, things like physical appearance, their behavior, their thoughts, and their feelings. So appearance and behavior, I can just look and I can identify that. That would be a sign. That's something that I can see. But the way that this young person is thinking or how they are feeling, those would be symptoms. I cannot just outright know unless they tell me. I'm going to have to ask about this. We want to try not to assume that I know how someone is thinking or feeling just because of how they look or what they're doing. So we're going to talk about some of them. There's obviously a lot more. Really, we're looking in changes from that person's baseline. So if it's someone that you don't know very well, you haven't had a chance to establish a baseline, you might not really be able to catch some of these things, and we can use other adolescents kind of as a baseline. I know that's not a perfect measurement, but if you know someone really well, we're really just looking for slight changes. So this might be things like the way that they look, really unkempt. Again, this would be like different than usual for them. If they look really tired or have any evidence of harm, if they're moving really, really slowly, or even really, really quickly compared to usual. If you see that they're really jumpy or they flinch a lot at slight movements or loud noises, things like that. As far as behavior, if they are crying or yelling, acting out, zoning out, having trouble concentrating, skipping school or work. And again, these would be patterns. This is not just like one time they were doing this because they were tired from a long weekend. This would be, patterns of doing this that are impacting their ability to function. If they're using drugs or alcohol, withdrawing from friends or family, changes in eating in either direction, changes in sleeping in either direction, super avoidant behavior, avoiding places or activities or certain people, those can be signs and symptoms. As far as their thought, we're going to see distorted thinking. So the way that they are thinking is not going to align with the way that they previously were thinking. So maybe some self-blame or criticism or self-hatred, thinking that everyone hates them or that they hate everyone. Suicidal thoughts, self-harm thoughts, those can definitely be problematic. And then as far as feelings, maybe they feel really anxious or scared or worried, worthless, hopeless. You might hear young people describing these types of things as how they're feeling. So again, when it comes to thoughts and feelings, the only way for me to know is to straight up ask and have them tell me. So we'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, so once we see this, we recognized we can't just leave it at that. We have to do something about it. So we have to either me directly talk to this young person, or find someone else that might be more appropriate to have this conversation with them. So to start this conversation, um, this is the idea that if we want young people to reach out, we have to reach in. Us as the adults, the professional, the parent, whatever capacity you are in, we are essentially the ones that have to start this conversation. And there may be the chance, I'm sure this has happened, right, where a young person does want to start this conversation. But for the most part, especially if this is not an open line of communication, if I just now am meeting this person, yeah, if we want young people to reach out, we have to reach in. I was not able to find like who to credit this to. This came from my mom. When I told her I was doing this presentation, this was what she said. She's like, well, if you want them to seek help, you have to start. You have to reach in first. So this came from somewhere on the internet, Instagram. But I do like this idea, right? So we're going to be reaching out. We are essentially opening the doors for this conversation. It is much more likely that we can actually have a conversation if they want to ask for help. Like that's me saying, you have to do something. You have to reach out. So we're going to start. That's going to be the idea here. So we are going to be effective listeners. The number one way that we can, discourage them from seeking help is to have them feel like we're not listening. And if you hear any young person, that's like the first thing they're going to say, like, no one's listening to me, no one hears me. So the one thing we want to try to do first and foremost is just listen to what they are telling me. There's a picture of sponges down here in the corner, little like dish sponges. That's going to be me as I'm listening. I'm going to sit here like a sponge and just absorb everything that they are saying. I'm not going to judge what they're saying. I'm not going to disagree with it or try to argue. That's not what the sponge does. The sponge doesn't say, oh, I don't want this piece of water. Like it just comes in as a sponge. So we're going to take the water, take what this person is saying, try to have a neutral face, not pass judgment, try to be open-minded and not filter what they're telling you through your own experiences, but really just listen to what it is that they're saying. That's kind of the crucial idea. We're going to keep talking about this more. But words do matter. So the things that we say do matter. We used to say, uh, words will never hurt me, right? But that's not true. Words definitely matter. And the things that I'm saying to a young person, they convey whether or not I care and whether or not I'm a good person for them to come to in the future. So if we want to encourage young people to seek help, we have to have adults who are good listeners. Otherwise, that young person's not going to try to come to you for help. So we can do this by conveying respect and genuine interest in their stories. This sounds like, asking follow-up questions in a non-judgmental way because we're genuinely interested in what they're telling me. This also is me clarifying what they are talking about. That genuine interest is me getting on the same page as them and understanding, are we on the same page here? So I'm going to show you two just quick little video clips that are good examples of kind of starting this conversation. So both clips, I'm going to show you kind of one and then we'll debrief it. Then we'll show the next one. Both of them are the first conversation, just initially starting this. We've noticed something and we want to talk about it. So the first one is very simple and the second one is a little bit more detailed. But as you're watching, I want you to just take note of things that are maybe helpful. Maybe if there was anything that was not helpful. And if you want to kind of take note of some of the concrete phrases that is kind of what we're aiming for here, to create our own little script. So yeah, let's go ahead and play this first clip.
Is it okay, Emma? You've barely touched it.
I'm not hungry.
Is it the dinner or something else?
I just really don't feel like eating.
Something going on at college?
I don't know. I just feel sick all the time.
Can you tell me a little bit more?
I get these thoughts, Dad.
What kind of thoughts?
I don't know. It started with exams, and now it's everything. The stress of it all makes me feel sick, and then I can't eat. Or I feel like I can't.
I'm sorry, I just didn't realize.
Yeah. It's been a bit of a cycle, and I didn't really know how to talk about it to you or anyone.
Been going on for some time then, love, has it?
For all of this term, some of last term, and it's just getting worse.
That's a long time, Emma. I thought maybe something was up, but hadn't realized that it had been for so long. And, well, maybe I didn't really know how to talk to you about it. But I think it's really beginning to affect you, especially as you're struggling to eat properly. It's worth talking to someone.
I mean, what am I supposed to say?
Well, perhaps start by saying that you think you might need a little bit of help. You know, I'm always here and I'm happy to support you, but I am no expert.
But I wouldn't know where to start or who to talk to.
Our GP, teachers, there are plenty of support groups out there. Even if it's hard to find the words, perhaps consider putting them down on paper beforehand. There are lots of places that we could start looking.
Maybe we could look together?
Sure. And we can find something that will be best for you. And if that doesn't work, well, we'll find something else. Shall we take a look?
Okay. Thanks, Dad.
Anytime. Let's see what we can find.
Okay, I'm seeing some in the chat already. Awesome. If anybody else would like to add, if you have any particular thoughts or feelings about this video, if you think maybe this was effective, if there's any particular words or phrases you plan to take from this. I really liked that it was very simple, right? Like this was a very simple conversation, but it was very effective. And I see you guys said he was very non-judgmental. He didn't take it personally. Yeah, very supportive, gave options. Yes, very calm. Yeah. And you'll notice that he responded to a lot of what she said with questions. Like, what do you mean? Or can you tell me more? Yeah, it would be great if all students had a support system like this. Yeah, we know unfortunately that's not always the case. That's why it's important to talk to more people about this so that we can be that person for somebody. Even if I'm not your parent, I can still be there for a young person, right? That's especially important for all of us to learn more about this because not every young person does have a good system at home. So we need to be that system and kind of fill in those gaps. Yeah, he admitted he'd been concerned, but didn't know what to do either. Yeah, we can be really honest with each other. That's helpful. Yeah, didn't rush into anything. Yeah, we'll seek help, and if that doesn't work, we'll try something else. Yeah, I did like that a lot. Okay, awesome. Hopefully you were able to take some words or phrases, or even just understanding the simplicity of it. I suggest rewatching it. This is going to be posted, this is recorded, and it will be posted and available on FATA's website. You can also just look on YouTube, for that specific clip. But I think it's really helpful to watch it a couple of times so that we can really start to kind of memorize the way that the dad is asking these follow-up questions and be prepared to ask them ourselves. Instead of saying, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're struggling. He just said, like, can you tell me more? And instead of having the perfect thing to say, he's just asking more questions and being genuine in what he's trying to get from her. Yeah, communication is always the key. And he was very honest and didn't try to act like he knew what she should do. It was just a matter of let's look together. Okay, awesome. So that was a very simple, straightforward conversation. This next video clip is going to be between a younger person, and I guess we're assuming maybe her dad. I'm not sure if it explicitly says that. But it's a young person and an adult, and in this next clip, there has been a little bit of mistrust, where it seems like the adult hasn't been a very good listener. So this is a really cool example of a more complicated conversation, I guess we could say. So if you want to, again, take notes, try to write down anything that is key here. You can put them in the chat as the video is playing, or you can wait until the end. But yeah, we can go ahead and play this next clip.
Hey, what's been going on? I want to check in with you if that's okay.
What's up? Am I in trouble?
No. Just the pandemic is getting me down. I feel overwhelmed, anxious, and exhausted. I'm feeling some type of way, so I wanted to see how you're doing with school, friends, and everything that's changed over this year.
I'm fine, Everything is good.
Oh, it's good to hear. I just wanted to check in because sometimes we're struggling and might not even realize it. Like, I noticed that you've been up all night, eating less, hanging out with your friends less too. It's important that you know that I'm here for you.
Yeah, whatever. When I tried to talk to you about stuff before, it seemed like you weren't really listening, or like you felt my issues were small. Like you said that because I don't have to pay bills and because I'm young, I don't have a reason to be depressed or anxious. And that just makes me not want to say anything.
I'm sorry I made you feel that way. I grew up thinking about struggles very differently. It wasn't a thing to talk about mental wellness with family because they would call you crazy. Say all you have to do is pray on it. We were raised the way we were raised. You have to be strong and deal with it. I thought, okay, you have to hide your feelings and ignore them. But I want to change now. I've learned more because that's not healthy for either of us.
Well, okay. I guess I've had more anxiety and don't want to do much.
I get what you're going through. I want to help you get through this tough time and learn how to listen and support you better.
Okay, but I still feel like you don't get it. 'Cause you don't know what I'm going through. Sometimes my thoughts are just out of control and I can't focus on stuff. I don't even know why.
You're right. I'm sorry. I want to understand where you're coming from. What's making you feel that way?
I don't really want to talk with you about it right now. I don't want a whole lecture.
You don't have to share everything with me. Maybe there's someone in your life you do feel comfortable talking to. What would worry me is if you ignore your feelings and hope they change on their own, because they can come out later in bad ways. I've looked into some helpful things, like counselors you could talk to, or group sessions where you talk about it with other people who sometimes feel anxious. even just so you know you're not alone. As long as you're talking to someone, I'm happy.
I feel you. I guess I appreciate that you brought this up in such a chill way. I was expecting something completely different, but this felt good. But yeah, it's helpful to know that I have options. I don't know if it's that bad where I gotta talk to a therapist or whatever, but since you're cool with it, maybe I'll consider it.
Yeah, I'm looking at getting my own support. I tried free online counseling. You can call or text someone who's trained to talk about this stuff, and they don't even need to know your name. You can chat with them about whatever. But I want you to choose what works best for you.
Yeah, okay. I think it would be dope to check in with you next week to see what I'm thinking, if you're down for it.
All right. So what are you guys thinking about this? Are there any takeaway phrases that you're planning to use in the future? Yeah, we like that he apologized and didn't make excuses. Yeah. Yeah, acknowledged the mistakes that he had made. Yeah, so this is more of an example of someone a little more guarded who had been hurt in the past by attempting to open up. Which we are in the chat box, we are saying is can be normal, right? A lot of times, especially if we're working with a young person who is already showing signs and symptoms, like they are probably coming from a place where it's even more essential for us to be good listeners. He didn't take it personally when she didn't want to talk to him. Yeah, that's a big one, especially for parents. Gave her different options. Yeah, he was trying to break barriers of how he was raised. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully there were some good little snippets there. Hopefully, like I see in the chat, we see this one's a little more relatable. So hopefully you were able to take some things away from that that you could use in a future conversation. We're going to talk a little bit more about some other things if we haven't already mentioned them. These are some other additional takeaways or things that we can try to do. So we want to state observations directly. They both dads did this. The one said that he noticed she was struggling to eat. The other one mentioned same thing, you haven't been eating, you've been staying up really late. So just stating observations without any sort of judgment, expressing concern in a non-judgmental way, right? Expressing willingness to help. Both dads try to reach out in some way and say, I'm here to either look this up with you. You can talk to me, you can talk to someone else. Neither of them took that personally. Having resources on hand in case a young person does say, you know what, I would like to talk to a professional. And so we will talk about that and, being equipped in case the young person is ready. Using I statements. I'm seeing that maybe someone's not seeing the slides.
Give me just 1 second, Maddie.
Okay. So some people are able to see them. Okay. Okay, a lot of people said they can. Okay, I'm gonna keep going here. So yeah, we're still talking about the takeaways. So using I statements can be really helpful to avoid the young person from getting overly defensive. Again, we are just stating observations. So saying something like, I noticed you've been staying up really late and haven't been eating as much. And then tying that into expressing concern. I really care about you. I want to make sure you're okay. And then expressing willingness to help, which is like, let's look it up together. Or maybe you already have resources on hand. It's okay to say, I'm not really sure what they are. Let's look them up together or something along those lines, and to sit down and look together. Okay, I see other people are adding stuff. Mentioning how important it is for the choice to be the young person's. Yeah, whatever this young person is comfortable with, especially if this is not a crisis. We can give that young person options. We know, I'm sure you can remember back to when you were a young person. Decisions, treatment, help is much more effective when it was your decision to get help. Any sort of activity was more effective if it was your decision to do it. So, yes, empowering young people with choices and a voice in order to give a young person, or in order for a young person to really fully consent to whatever is happening, they have to be informed. It has to be informed consent. They need to know what the options are before they can say yes or no to the options. Yeah, being flexible. Yeah. See if there's anything else. Yeah, saying you don't have to talk to me, but we can find someone else for you to talk to. Okay, awesome. Those are some great takeaways that I wanted us to be getting from those clips. Here's some other concrete examples. We want to try to avoid saying anything like, oh, I know exactly how you feel. Sometimes it is good to share our own stories or our own difficulties. We can do that, but we do not know exactly how they feel. We already agreed being a young person right now is different. Even if you were a young person or a high schooler, even just a few years ago, like it is different. Every day it changes so quickly. So saying exactly doesn't make us seem credible. It just takes our credibility away. Or saying, oh, that happened to me when I was your age. Any sort of like minimizing language, where we say, oh, you're so young. What could you possibly worried about? That was mentioned in that clip. All that's going to do is, again, take your credibility away. So instead, saying something like, thank you for telling me that. Or like, I'm glad we're having this talk. I'm glad we're able to talk about this. I'm glad you trust me. Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me or show me that. Validating, acknowledging, that must be really, fill in the blank. That must be really stressful or really difficult for you. I can see why that's so stressful, or I can see why that's so overwhelming. Fill in the blank as needed. Saying things like, I'm always here if you want to talk. We can also use that to tie in the fact that there's professionals too, or even other people, right? Especially if you are a parent or if you are really close to this young person, maybe they don't want to tell you everything. So I'm always here if you want to talk. There are also other people, maybe again, listing some people they could talk to. If appropriate, maybe saying something like, you can call or text me if you want to talk. Obviously, that's not always appropriate, depending on your relationship to this young person. But if that's possible, that can definitely be a good way for this young person to kind of think about this and then get back to you in a very comfortable format for them, which is usually probably texting or some sort of, online chat versus talking on the phone. Saying, I noticed, we kind of talked about that already. Asking, is there anything that you would like to talk about? Or asking other types of questions like, how so? Or what do you mean by that? I like that one a lot because, again, we want to make sure we're on the same page. And language evolves and changes. And again, I want to make sure that we're not adding more confusion. So just make sure we clarify what we're even talking about. What do you mean by that? How did that make you feel? How so? I already mentioned that one. I like that one a lot. If a young person says something that's alarming, instead of judging or immediately saying like, you shouldn't feel like that, just saying, how so? Can you tell me more about this? And empowering them, giving them the choice to tell you more. We're not forcing them and like making them tell you. Yeah, empowering this young person. So I've seen that in the chat box as well too. We want to empower them to make this decision to reach out to me. I'm not forcing them. I'm not giving them any sort of ultimatum. I'm not making them feel pressure. I'm just letting them know that if they come to me, I would be able to help. Like, I have knowledge, I have tools, I am able to help if they want to come to me. We're going to help young people to recognize and then manage / cope with these difficult, intense emotions and feelings that they are having. Life is difficult, especially with a young person. I remember in the chat, someone said they didn't have any control over their life or didn't have any control over their home life, right? That's generally the case for a lot of young people. So helping them cope with this, empowering them to reach out if they feel like they cannot cope on their own, giving them the tools, but letting them know we're here too as a supplement. Okay, so we are reaching out, we are talking to these young people, we're giving them tools, we are amazing listeners. Now we need to actually know what to do if they do want help, right? We have to have some concrete tools. So professional help is one option. Things like a suicide or a crisis lifeline. We have 988 is our national line for suicide or crisis, and you can call, text, or use like a computer to chat. So that can be one of the options that we're presenting when we're talking to this young person, you know, giving them this resource that they can use later in their own time. It's more more anonymous, that they can talk to somebody without having to talk to their parent, for example. There's findsupport.gov. For any sort of substance abuse or mental health services, you can use the SAMHSA or My Florida Families website. We have the DCF website here, myfloridafamilies.com. Those can be more location specific. As far as, so that can be one option for professional help, right? We don't always have to immediately jump into professional help, but just knowing that is an option, especially, let me go back a second. It just depends on where you are located. Find your specific resources. Most of the resources that I know of are in Alachua County, but based on the chat, I know you guys are all over Florida. So that will be a really useful tool to help you find specific ones for you. And then 988 is national. But we don't always have to necessarily jump straight to professional help, especially if we are catching this early intervention. We can also encourage this young person to be doing self-help. So as long as they are not hurting themselves or anyone else, self-help can be whatever they interpret it to be. It does not have to be this textbook, you have to meditate. Like there's so much more than that. And again, as long as it's something that that young person enjoys doing and finds benefit from doing, as long as it's not engaging in any sort of harm, then that is a useful strategy. So things like journaling or doing a voice memo journal, any sort of physical activity or physical healthy meals, hydration tracking, physical movement, and then other support strategies. So these are not necessarily like professional therapists, but they are very effective strategies. And we never want to underestimate the power of connection. So having a group or a team or something like that is really beneficial. So something like Alateen, which can be for young people who have been affected by someone's drinking in their life. The Boys and Girls Club, NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They have a lot of family groups and peer-to-peer activities. If this is a young person, right, so we're assuming that they are probably in school. If they are in a traditional type of school, maybe there's a club or some sort of extracurricular activity for them, maybe a sport team or some sort of hobbies, whatever, again, whatever's specific to this young person. A youth group, if this is a, church-oriented family or someone that goes to church, spending time with young people in that capacity, spending time with you, whoever you are, whatever relationship you have to this young person, don't underestimate the power of planting that seed. So I'll give you kind of an analogy here when we're talking about planting seeds. If you planted a seed, let's say a tomato seed, if you planted it today or whenever, in the spring, it would take a long time before you're actually getting any tomatoes. And you might not ever even get any tomatoes. But I can guarantee you that you will not get any tomatoes if you never plant the seed. So we want to think about each of these interactions with young people as seeds that we are planting. And they are doing something. They are beneficial, even if it doesn't give you a tomato that very next time you see this young person. Okay, so one of the last things I want to talk about here is that young people are learning from you. Again, whether or not you realize that, they are watching you, they are noticing what you are doing, they are learning from you. So we need to make sure that we are acknowledging this and acknowledging the role that we play and that we model self-care. If I'm encouraging this young person to get help, but I'm not engaging in any sort of healthy activities myself, there's a lot of disconnect there. And it's going to be difficult for me to encourage that young person to seek help if I'm not coming from a place of wellness in the first place. This also is the idea that if I'm going to help a young person who's having these big, strong feelings, I need to be calm. I can't talk about, oh, you need to regulate if I can't even do that in the first place. And again, a lot of us are not taught that. So it starts with you. It starts with you being the person you wish was there for you when you were a young person. I saw that in the chat box too. We have to be that person. We need to be calm in the face of dysregulation. So this is the idea that this young person, when their storm meets our calm, we have co-regulation. And that's really powerful. But again, we can't even get to that if you cannot self-regulate to begin with. So start with that, start practicing this, start learning more about what that means. If you are not sure what self-regulation means, learn more about it. Establish some of those coping strategies that are your go-to strategies for when you are dealing with a young person or encountering them. So being able to self-soothe is going to be really important, especially if a young person is telling you something that is very tricky or alarming. If they're talking about suicidal intentions, if they're talking about self-harm or a friend that is self-harming, we need to be calm and we need to show them that we can handle whatever it is that they're going to bring to me. Because if I can't handle it, they're not going to bring it to me. So yeah, we need to act as models for young people in our lives. We want to not only, be a calm model. I want to show young people how to do this. I want to engage in self-care with young people so that they can understand self-care should be built into your day-to-day activities. So self-care is not something that we are only going to engage in because we are stressed out. Ideally, we're going to engage in self-care proactively before we get really stressed out. That way, if inevitably something stressful is happening or we're dealing with a crisis situation with a young person, we know what strategies we can use to help mitigate that stress. This is just like the crisis numbers or hotlines. I want to have this before I need it. I want to know what the crisis lines are. I want to know what calms me down before I get to this high level of stress. And I want to practice it on a daily basis so that if I do get to this level, I'm able to self-regulate, which allows me to be more effective as a listener, and it allows me to be a good model for this young person who inevitably could benefit from more role models. So at this point, would anybody like to share in the chat box from any of these 8 dimensions, what are some self-care strategies that you know actually do work for you? Oh, I'm seeing a lot I've already missed in the chat. You guys are putting local resources. Awesome. I guess I had missed that. So yeah, 211. Everybody is mentioning cool. All right, so self-care, journaling, taking a walk, spending time with friends, cooking, nice. Yoga, Pilates, praying, gardening and food preservation, nice. Bubble bath, going to the gym, taking time for me, doing a recap, nice. That sounds like a lot of that positive self-reflection. Change of scenery, mindfulness strategies, yeah, connecting to consciousness to help de-escalate. Awesome. Traveling. Okay, cool. So I'm seeing a lot of diverse answers, a lot of similarities too, which is really great. The key here is that it's the most effective strategy for you as an individual, not just doing something because someone else wants to do it, but whatever the strategies are for you personally. Yeah, spend time in a quiet place. Nice. Okay, awesome. So I encourage you, if you don't have a solid self-care plan, I encourage you to think a little bit about that. And maybe try something new. Maybe pick something out of the chat box that seems like it would work for you too. And try engaging in that. Again, try it proactively. Don't just do it because you're stressed out. Do it anyway, independently of your stress level. Awesome. Okay, so then one of the other kind of things I want to wrap up on here is the idea that encouraging a young person to seek help is kind of, we can think of it as something that is built into every single interaction that I have with every single young person. Trying to open the door for these conversations at every opportunity, not just because signs are present. So I've just included a little collage here of different activities with a parent or, some sort of adult figure and a young person that involve connection. It does not have to be, every single time we sit down, we have to talk about your mental health. Like, that's not the case. We're going to sit down and have these conversations and be good listeners, even when there's no signs or symptoms. Even when this young person is just telling you about their day, we're asking more questions, we're practicing this, we're saying, oh, how so? Do you mind telling me more about that? Would you like to tell me more about that? Getting more information at every opportunity. And so I hope that you are able to take away from this the idea and the belief that you have the power to encourage a young person to ask for help. It really just comes down to being okay with, putting yourself in this conversation and being willing to accept and listen to what they are telling you. And then being able to match that to resources and connecting them, whether that be connecting them to you or some sort of other trusted adult. Maybe that's like a school group or a teacher or some sort of professional, whatever level is needed at that point. Being able to meet that and then connect them to that help. But really understanding that you are going to be sometimes the first point of contact for when this young person is needing help. And so to encourage them to seek help, we can be good role models and open the lines of communication as much as we possibly can, even for everyday conversations, not just mental health challenges. Okay, so does anybody have any questions or any additional phrases you want to add? We're building our script here so that we can talk to young people. So any final phrases you want to add? or any questions
Maddie,
that you guys have.
there was a question in the chat a little while ago from a person who asked, how do we address these topics with resistant youth?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. How do we address this with a more resistant youth? Would anybody like to answer that question? What do you guys think about that? A more resistant youth. What would you guys suggest? Any like overlapping, or do we need new stuff? Yeah, be patient. Address what you observe, meet them where they're at. We kind of mentioned that. Yeah, keep trying to break the wall down. Yeah, it's like we're planting those seeds, right? We want to really note that those seeds are being planted. And even if it doesn't feel like it, me being present and showing that I am patient and ready is going to be really important. Or yeah, maybe we are talking to somebody else. Maybe I'm not the right adult for this. Maybe I'm too close to this person, or maybe I don't know this person at all. Maybe they don't trust me. It doesn't necessarily have to be me, right? We can connect them to somebody else, some other trusted adult that is more prepared or maybe more equipped, maybe has more of a rapport with this young person already. Yeah, letting them know you're here even if they change their mind. Tell them you're proud of them, proud to see them. You never know the last time someone said something nice to them or how much they needed to hear something like that. Yeah, going back to that validation list, checking in on them, even if they are not super receptive to it, just continuing that consistent, ongoing support, consistent emotional support. Yeah, continue to be there until they're ready. Yeah, awesome answers. I'm seeing a lot of kind of common themes to what we've already mentioned today. Mentoring programs. Yeah, I don't think we said that yet. Keep talking, touch base daily. Yeah. Someone said with resistant young clients, I often used music and asked their relatability to the lyrics. Nice. That's a really awesome specific strategy. Does that answer your question? You guys added a lot of really good stuff in there. Yeah, respect the boundaries of the timing. Might just not be the correct time and place at that moment. We can always try to clarify what the goal of the young person is. Maybe the goal that I want for them is just way off base and it has nothing to do with what they want to see for their future or for themselves. Someone said, can I suggest something? Yeah, that's giving that empowerment. Maybe share some of your story. Yeah, at that point, that might become more of an appropriate thing to add. We don't want to like initially start with that, but if it's someone that's very resistant, yeah, maybe we can add some self-disclosure. Yeah, great ideas. Yes, self-disclosure has to be at the right time. We don't want to just immediately turn the spotlight onto me and talk about myself and how I coped with this. But if the person is resistant, that might be enough to kind of show them that you're more trustworthy and that you do know what you're talking about, right? Building up some credibility. Validate their emotions. Yeah, in every conversation, right? Not just when they're upset. Yeah. Are there any other specific questions? Share success stories of someone they might relate to. Yeah, try to figure out who are their role models. what are their goals? Like, what kind of health or wellness goals are they looking to achieve? And then find someone that meets that criteria. Yeah. Sometimes they don't want to talk about it, so I use activities for them to write it out. Yeah. Yeah, just like playing, engaging in play at whatever age appropriate level. You know, if someone doesn't want to talk about their mental health struggles at this moment, maybe we just go and do a fun activity. That's kind of why I included this picture of, you know, people, no one in these pictures is like having this serious conversation, right? They're just hanging out. They're engaging. The adult and the young person are actively engaging with each other. Yeah, sometimes it's easy to write it down or to draw instead. Awesome. Yeah, great feedback in the chat box. Thank you guys for adding all of that. Young people like brain pain instead of saying mental health. Yeah, using age-appropriate language. We don't have to treat them like they're taking an abnormal psych class. Yeah. Yeah, thank you again for all of this feedback. Want to make sure I'm scrolling through again, not to miss anything. Yeah, someone talked about building a living room with furniture and lamps to make it really homey. I'm assuming like in an office environment. Small groups to decompress daily after school to help them open up. Yeah, awesome. Relaxation corner. Yeah. Oh, in a classroom. Okay. Okay, awesome. Thank you guys for all of those additions. I think, yeah, that was kind of the conclusion of what I wanted to mention. Thank you guys for kind of validating that with your comments in the chat. We still have a little bit of time if you guys want to add anything else or ask any other questions, exchange contact information with anybody in the chats. But yeah, if you don't have any other formal questions, that is the end of my presentation.